Hey, everybody, and welcome to our Whenever the Hell We Feel Like It's episode of the Registered Nerd Podcast. I'm joined today by Webbed and Snack Packs, and I'm Guilty Spark. And I think we're going to talk about the clusterfuck that is the Star Wars Episode 9 trailer. And more specifically than that, we're going to make some predictions. Predictions of what we want to see, predictions what we expect to see, and then maybe talk about what could fix this dumpster fire of a trilogy. Yeah, so I think that's the plan. Who'd like to go first?
Well, do you want my prediction of what
I
I think Disney will do, or do you want what I would make?
I think let's start off with like what we think is actually going to happen, and we can just kind of round robin and like each make a prediction of what we think is going to be in this movie based on what we've seen in the trailers and like what we know about Disney.
Okay. Well, the thing is that J.J. Abrams can never finish anything. Like he can set up like the whole mystery box thing. I know that's kind of like everybody knows that, but like that's basically his thing. Is he sets up these mysteries,
Oh,
but there's
sure.
never ever a
Great
pay.
great setup, horrible payoff. Or
Yeah,
non-existent payoff, I should say.
Yeah, almost
yeah.
all of his payoffs to me have been subpar. I like, going back to even Lost, like I remember getting hooked on it and being like, this is so cool. And then the ending to everything he's ever done is just like the ending of Lost. It's like, I wasted my time on this? What the fuck?
Yeah, I started to get the feeling that was kind of everyone's like first experience with J.J. Abrams, where it's like, wow, this is a really talented like young director, and he's obviously very like influenced by Spielberg, and I maintain he's a good director. He's not a good writer though, and the problem is he really wants to write everything, and yeah. So was there a prediction there, or is this just a general prediction of that there won't be a payoff? Like, I think there
Um,
has to be a payoff.
I
I,
just
I think
worry
they
with him behind the helm. But
Well, the problem is that the stuff that he probably originally planned was upset by everything in the Last Jedi. Like he, he's got to kind of reset the table a little bit
do you
almost.
think
Yeah.
he had a plan, though?
I think he did. I
What a
think he I think he did have a plan. I think he had a tentative plan of what he wanted because he gave
And what's
Ryan
that
Johnson.
plan then? Like, what's
He
your prediction for what he wants to do?
so we're gonna round robin predictions. So what's a prediction, Snack Packs, that you think will be like in this movie? Something that's gonna happen, or
um well, I mean, obviously Palpatine's back, and I don't know if they're gonna try and make it so he was like manipulating events from
the
from the
whole time?
beginning the whole time, or if they're just because I feel like I don't know. Uh, I'm not sure what they were gonna do with Snoke. If Snoke was originally like going to be that guy, and then like J.J. Abrams was like, "Oh, I guess Ryan Johnson killed Snoke, so now I got to bring back a big bad."
Right. Well, and
You know what I mean?
Palpatine being back is basically confirmed. But do you think he's gonna be um? Do you think he's gonna be like a Force ghost? Do you think he's
He,
gonna be in a clone? Do you like how do you think he's gonna come back? Like how do you think Disney's gonna do it? Not how they should do it. How do you think it's gonna be?
Yeah. The books
um,
already did like a clone scenario.
Yeah, but remember the books don't matter. Disney lit them on
I
fire, so
know, I know. No, what I
um,
worry about is either whatever they do for I don't know whether if it's going to be a clone or a Force Ghost or the real him, like he survived, or who knows what it is. But I worry that two things they're going to say that he has been pulling the strings, which definitely got fucked up by Ryan Johnson, and then the other thing I worry about is are they going to try to play off some stupid like Ben and what's her name romance? Because that's going to piss me off if they do that.
okay, so Webb's prediction, his first prediction is Kylo and Rey romance. I don't I don't know if I agree with romance. I think maybe like I could see Disney they work together to defeat the Emperor. I think that's almost I'm almost positive that that's going to happen. Um so I have a prediction my first prediction from the trailer, and it's pretty obvious, is Finn, and there's a new character in the ship with him. I don't know who she is. She's a black female. Um, they go and they find the Imperial mothballed fleet. It looks like it's parked in a nebula. It looks like it's completely shut down and just kind of like, honestly, it just looks like a mothballed fleet. Somebody said that I don't remember where I heard this, but somebody said that in the new books, the Disney books, like that's kind of already been established that the Imperial fleet after the war, Galactic War, was like kind of parked somewhere. Um, and so I have a feeling that we kind of got left off with the Resistance has no forces. So I think a part of the movie is going to be that Finn goes off to find these ships, and there's a little bit of precedent for that in Star Wars with like the Lost Fleet, and I think there have been some books where everybody's trying to race to find these like old dreadnought ships and stuff. So that's my first prediction is Finn will spend most of the movie, or at least a large chunk of it, going to get these ships. They'll have a little mini adventure as they reactivate them, and then the old Imperial ships from the Galactic Civil War will now be on the side of the good guys.
Yeah, I guess my question is, does it make sense for them to have it like? Is this something that's been established in like the new books or like the
Yeah,
old?
in the new
Okay,
books, in the Disney
okay,
books. And I mean, it,
okay,
it
okay, okay.
almost makes sense because, like, in the real world, that's kind of happened too, where, like, when Germany lost the First World War, uh, the United Kingdom and France, like, had them sail their fleet up to Scapa Flow, which was the British, like, area. And the whole thing is they were going to, like, inter the entire fleet and kind of, like, divide it up. And, it was going to be war prizes and scrapped. And, the Germans actually ended up sinking a lot of it because there was some miscommunication about the time of the surrender, and so they weren't sure if Germany had actually surrendered, so they weren't going to turn over their ships, so they just sank a bunch of them themselves. But there's some precedent for that, like maybe part of the treaty. This is the thing, though; these new movies have created like no world building, so we don't know like what happened at the end of the Galactic Civil War because these movies haven't told us. It might be all in the books. I have no idea. I never learned how to read, but like
Mhm.
that's my first prediction is it's going to be a big fan service moment where the resistance is using star destroyers and stuff to fight the First Order and all of their star destroyers. All right, Snack.
I'm just gonna say that. I mean, I assume you see the trailer, right, Webb?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been a little bit.
Oh,
I
you
watched it
haven't
a
seen
few
the
days
new
back.
trailer though, the Disney trailer, the one that just came out?
At the Disney Plus unveil thing. I
Yeah.
don't know if I watched that.
Okay,
well, all
that's
I'm
what a
gonna say
lot
is
of our
this.
predictions are going to come from because that kind of revealed
This
a little more.
Okay, yeah, because
the
they might have shown the fleet in the first one, but very briefly. So based
No.
on how much you're predicting that, so I will say something real quick though too. Is in the old books there was some precedent for the fleet, like fleets being derelict and whatever too,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
also
Yeah,
that
that's
was one of the big premises of like the whole Admiral Thrawn
mhm.
thing in the books. He was like a major character, like evil dude in the expanded universe, and he kind of was like banished by the Emperor, and then like was like in the far reaches of the galaxy, and like came back, with
Yeah, no,
his Imperial fleet.
it definitely seems like a callback to all of that. And like this fleet does not look active. You've got to watch the trailer, Webb. You should almost watch it in the background while we're talking so you know what the fuck we're saying. But it's literally like it's
Yeah, I'll
in a
pull it
net.
up in a sec.
Yeah, it's in a nebula. You don't need the sound on. And the first half of it is literally just shots from the previous two trilogies, so you don't even need to watch it. Like you can literally start at the halfway mark once it starts showing new scenes, but um
I think that the the Sith Ray thing is just a misdirect,
okay,
flat
so
out.
Yeah, I did see
Snack
that.
Pack's next prediction is a misdirect on Sith Ray. I think
I think it's either a clone or a Force vision. There's no way. Like, why would they put that in? Like,
so.
that's what's way too much on the nose for like a trailer. You know what I mean?
So here's my prediction because I have a similar prediction. I think Ray is either the daughter or the clone of Palpatine,
Hmm.
and I think there's multiple of them. And I think because Disney does not have the balls to make Ray evil, so I think what we're gonna see is an evil Ray clone that is kind of the Darth Vader character that is fighting. And things I have to support that is um, she uses this weird double-bladed lightsaber, which is a Darth Maul callback. So Sidious's apprentices in the past have been trained in this double lightsaber, um, and I think they really don't have the balls to make their Mary Sue character turn evil. I don't even know if but the fact that I think
That would make sense.
in the Last Jedi, people were talking about, and this kind of makes sense. I've been trying to think about things from the other movies, and assuming this is somehow actually an overarching
Well,
story. Like when she goes in, when she has her cave scene, like Luke's scene. I'm trying to break down what happens in there, and the fact that you see it's like a mirror, but you see like hundreds of rays. I'm like,
mhm.
is that indicating that there were a bunch of Rays? Like, is she a bunch of clones? Was this one somehow smuggled away and dropped off on Jakku? Was she put on Jakku on purpose? But I feel like if they're competent movie makers, that needs to mean something. And maybe what it means is, for Luke, when in his cave scene, it meant like he was becoming afraid of becoming his father, or maybe on a path to become like his father. And for her, maybe it's, hey, there's a lot of you out there. Also, the fact that Luke talks about her going right to the dark side of the island and all that. I'm like, there's something going on there. I think she has a bigger connection to Palpatine than most people think.
Mhm.
That would make a lot of sense. I kind of like that angle.
Well,
I don't know
and I,
about you guys.
and I don't mind it so much as long as like you said, if they find a way to make it so that Palpatine is like manipulating her to to him so he can like possess her or turn her or whatever.
Right.
But like if she was to just do like this weird transformation where she has like one conversation with Palpatine and she's like, "Blah, I'm evil now," because
Yeah, but what if they're just showing Palpatine in those trailers because of like a theory like Kyle's or Sparks pays off because like it's not necessarily then Palpatine himself coming back. It's like it's not, and it's maybe not even a Force ghost. It's more like just like this echo of him,
It's
like
Palpatine. He's in
ringing
the
through his.
poster.
yeah,
He's on the new
he's in the
poster.
poster.
Yeah, I know he's in the poster, but I'm just saying, like maybe that Sith Ray is like being embodied by him or something like that. You know what I
No,
mean? And
what I'm saying is like as long as it's done like in a clever way, because at this point, like if Ray was to just be like, "Oh, I'm evil now," like we've spent two movies with her like always doing the right thing,
Right. And they've
always
tried to
making the
set
right
up
decisions.
this like darkness in her, but they've really only ever like talked about it. Like Luke talked about it a little bit, but she hasn't done anything. She always is like self-sacrificing and doing everything for others with like seemingly no reward for her. So
It's just like game. Like if she
there's
were
no
to go
time in movie 3 to have her have an arc. That's the
right,
problem.
that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting that into words better than I could.
That's okay. You were like having a small stroke there. I figured I'd
I
help you
know.
out.
Well, it's like it would be like the equivalent of what they did to Dany in Game of Thrones, where there's no build up to it. She's just like, oh well, I'm angry. I'm gonna start killing innocent people, even
Right.
though I've never done it
No,
before.
we've all
I
learned that
don't think,
like
yeah, I don't
rushing
think they're
stuff
gonna
doesn't
do that
work.
with Ray either. But it would make sense for them to have like an evil version of her that's like a clone or
Yeah.
like a sibling or whatever, and
Yeah.
it
And
would
I think it's
explain
going
why
to
she
be
was. But that would explain why she was also left on Jakku. That's been a big thing with people.
right.
Is like, who the fuck is she? Who are her parents? Where did she come from? Why the fuck was she left here? And they haven't really explained why. Maybe that could be the way they kind of fix the fuck up. You
Like she
know,
was smuggled away from the emperor somehow, and
to
they were
escape
like,
his influence.
we'll just drop
But
her
the
here.
evil Ray was not so fortunate. So
Yeah. And I really do think that is what it's going to be. I think people
Yeah.
but
I
talk
that
mean,
about,
works. I
oh, it's
mean,
a
I'm happy
dream.
with that. That's better than your parents are nobody.
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Well,
And I do
that's
think the other thing is, I think people are really not paying attention to. So this is kind of another prediction: is this movie is called The Rise of Skywalker, and I think Ben
yeah.
slash Kylo is going to be the hero of this film. I think he
I
has
think
to
so
be,
too.
because he can't just. He obviously has. I'm okay with his character. A lot of people hate him because he's a little bit whiny, but like he is conflicted. He's very young. He's easily influenced, but yeah, and we talked about, with The Force Awakens, how, they could have done his thing better. Like, I always thought the better origin story for him was Leia died in a way that you could kind of say Han could have prevented it if he had been around. And the fact that, like, Kylo blames his father for the death of his mother, and that kind of leads him to another father figure in Snoke and turns him to the dark side. See, that's what you call like motivation. And all we were ever given about Kylo is like, oh, he's kind of dark, and Luke drew his lightsaber, and so now Kylo's evil.
Yeah, it was Snoke got to him and
Snoke
was
got
like,
to him.
"Oh,
Like, what does that
oh,
even
really?
mean?
What does that even mean?"
Yeah. So
Like,
personally, I like my origin story for Kylo a little bit better. Also, it means you don't have to have Carrie Fisher in these films. She was a great woman. She was a great writer. She's her acting in her old age was terrible, I thought, in these movies. Like, she literally looked like she was on some sort of sedative. Um, and I think the movies would have been better off without her. That's just my personal opinion. Like, not that she's not a great person. She was an awesome person, and like I said, a hell of a writer. She was a really good script doctor in the later part of her career. But so I think, and I've heard nobody talk about it, but I think the movie's called The Rise of Skywalker. He's the only Skywalker that we have left,
right.
and I think it really has to be him kind of coming up and defeating Palpatine, and maybe with the help of Rey. Now that requires a lot of courage on Disney's part to make it not all about Rey, um, which so far they've had a hard time doing. Like, these movies are kind of all about Rey.
Right.
What else do we know? We know they're going to fight on the remains of the Death Star, the second Death Star.
From the trailer, it looks like there's some kind of other kind of super weapon almost. Did you see like those
Oh,
beams coming into like what is that?
the giant
Yeah.
laser. It doesn't really look like it's hitting hard enough that I would call it like a super weapon in the Star Wars
Uh,
universe. It actually
well,
looks
no,
kind
I
of
mean,
lame compared to the
I'm just saying that like,
yeah,
you know, JJ is big on the whole like
right.
super weapon thing. Like, he did it with Star Trek. He did it with The Force Awakens.
Right. Well, compared to a shot that I think is great in Rogue Squadron, Rogue One, where the Death Star fires at like limited power and blows up the city on the Jedi planet.
Mhm.
That's a great scene, and that looks really impressive without blowing up the entire planet. Actually, both times it fires and like hits a planet without blowing it up. When it does it again on Scarif, that looks so much cooler than what it looks like in the trailer, where this with this laser from like a flat angle, you're watching it hit something.
So
Um,
you think that there's going to be something on the remains of the Death Star to like
yeah,
activate this fleet thing? Is that why you think they're going to go there, or is there going to be some other
I
reason to
oh,
bring them to the Death Star?
that's not a bad thought. I was kind of thinking the Death Star would be originally. I was thinking that's where everything was kind of going to culminate and where the final
Mhm.
showdown would be.
Right.
I'm not so sure now. Just because I don't know. It's hard to tell from a trailer, but there's definitely something that's bringing everyone there because Kylo's there fighting Rey at some point, and Rey is with everyone, as they walk up to it. Um, from the I don't know, but that obviously like the Death Star has some sort of MacGuffin. Um,
Hmm.
but and obviously at that point, Rey and Kylo are not allies yet. I'm assuming they're going to end up as allies at some point, but they're not because they fight, near one of the turbo lasers, and yeah, I don't know.
It would have been good if what happened was like throughout the trilogy, like Rey just got more and more dark, and then like near the end, she kind of just went full evil, and then Ben kind of redeems himself.
That's
That would make sense for like the story
see,
called Rise of Skywalker.
that's
That's
what
what I
I want
want.
to see really bad,
Yeah,
but as we're talking about
but I
splitting our
just don't.
predictions with what we expect,
Yeah,
I don't think we'll
right.
see that.
Well, that's the thing. Is like I said, I think Disney's too far into the whole like uh the Force is female nonsense.
And
You know what I mean?
maybe they'll surprise us. Maybe this has all been leading up to Rey's horrible downfall, and like that could be something that could redeem the whole trilogy. Because, like I said, I've got no problem with female characters, but she's just so uninteresting, and that would kind of make her
She's
interesting.
bland.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she's very bland. Like, and a lot of people dog on her acting. I'm okay with her acting. She's just not
Oh, I don't mind
given
her
anything
acting at
to
all. I think
do. I think she's charismatic, but she's just
oh yeah,
not
for
given
sure.
anything to do.
I think she brings a lot of excitement to her role and stuff like that. I just don't think her character is a very strong character at all.
Yeah. Hey, I've got a
Although,
question about the new
go ahead.
trailer. You might have, I have no idea. Sometimes you notice little things that I don't see. What
Sure.
is with the scene where I think it's Poe and maybe Ray and Chewbacca? I think Finn is there too, and they're in the desert. Every movie has to have a desert planet, except for Empire, which was the best movie in the whole series. But all the other ones have to have a desert planet scene. They're walking up to like a festival. Like it looks like EDC Electric Forest. Like there's people flying fucking kites and it's like
Mhm.
tense and very colorful. I'm like, what on earth could they possibly need there?
Oh, they
Like
need the coordinates for the fleet for they need something to figure out where the remains of the Death Star are
why
from Maz Kanata or something, and that's
why
where she's at.
do you think Maz is there? It's like literally hundreds of
Probably.
thousands of people in the desert and it looks
They're
like a
looking
Right.
for
giant
the
party.
master kite flyer who
Yeah.
I
knows
guess.
where
Yeah, the
the
master
The
kite
master
flyer.
kite
fleet
flyer.
is, because they're shaped like kites.
He's
And you know
gonna
what'll happen?
he's
Is
gonna betray them,
yeah,
even though
right.
he
They're
won't
gonna
know
park.
anything about their plan. Oh
They're
wait,
gonna
they already
park
did that.
illegally. They're gonna park illegally, and instead of like getting arrested for it, they're just gonna get a parking ticket and pay it and leave.
Yeah,
You know,
like in a normal society, how things would
right?
work. Like, oh
Throw
my
you in
god.
jail.
God, The Last Jedi was such a piece of dog shit. It's such a shame because like I wanted to go into that movie and I wanted it to be the Empire Strikes Back of the, and not that I wanted it to do the same things, but I just wanted it to be that really like quality, dark, adult Star Wars film, and that's not at all what happened.
That is your opinion, sir.
I see people like I don't know. There's only two people that are still talking about The Last Jedi. The 99% of society has completely forgotten about it.
Hmm.
Um, and it's like the prequels. Um, People seem to think online they're like people talk about the prequels have this like reevaluation, and people are like, oh, see, the prequels are starting to be really loved now, and it's like. I don't think that's true. I think the only people that ever bring up the fucking prequels are people that love them from the beginning. So, like those of us we're over it. Like the people that actually are critical of things that are shit have kind of moved on to the new trilogy. So I don't even
Right.
like talk about the prequel and the prequels almost do look better, you
Well,
know.
the thing is, the prequels have a flow, like a story that flows. Like
There are
the
things I can say
characters,
I
there
I
are
like.
character arcs.
Yeah.
Like if the whole trilogy is basically about how Anakin becomes Darth Vader, like that's essentially, I
Right.
shouldn't say essentially what it's about, but it's like most of the
That's
arc
pretty much what it's
is about
about.
Anakin. You know,
The
like
yeah,
that's his end game, is getting the Death Star built and Anakin in the suit for
yeah.
Vader,
Now
right?
it's not well done, but at least it
No,
happens.
but it happens.
Yeah.
Like it's not like like this whole Kylo Ren thing where it's like, oh, he just decided to turn evil. Like you can see like throughout the series that there's like the hand of Palpatine kind of
Right.
just manipulating events
Well, and also
where
one of the things that I will say about the prequels is there's world building, and for the most part, like I know just from watching the movies, like what the fuck's going on, like in the galaxy. I understand that the Republic rules the galaxy, and that there's forces trying to like put a dictatorship in place, and it creates a civil war, and the business people, like all the business organizations, kind of get played into fighting the civil war, but this organization doesn't want them to win. It's more just to create crisis so that out of crisis opportunity. Like I get what the fuck's going on in these new films. They drop you into them and you're like, supposedly the Republic rules most of the galaxy, they won the war, but you have these new organizations, the First Order and the Resistance, and you're like, well, how did the First Order become so powerful? They're not the Empire. um they might be an Imperial remnant, you're never even told that. Why is the Resistance so poorly funded? Like, and they seem to kind of insinuate, like they don't even insinuate, you just have to come up with it yourself, that well, the Republic doesn't believe the First Order is a threat, so they're kind of just letting it go, which
I
turns
think
out to bite them in the ass.
that's kind of my biggest issue with the new movies is,
There's no
I
world
mean,
building. You don't know what the
you,
fuck's going on.
world building aside, in the prequels, you knew what was going to happen, right? It's
Right.
like you said, that there was a goal of showing how little baby Anakin got manipulated into becoming the big bad that he was in the original trilogy by Palpatine, and showing Palpatine's little subversion tactics all the way up until the time where he finally revealed himself as, like, I'm the badass boss and you're all going to listen to me, you know?
Right.
But you knew that was going to happen because you saw the sequel to those prequels already, right? You had watched those a million times if you're a fan. These, they had the disadvantage of not having that. So therefore, they should have spent time world building.
It
So then
just
you get into these and you're like,
yeah.
what the fuck is happening?
It just takes
And
literally a
that's why
conversation here or there to
I
explain.
Right.
I
And
feel
this,
like I'm even gonna be like, even if like Ray turns bad and Ben is the good guy, I feel like they're just gonna do it shitty. That's what I'm worried about.
Right.
Like,
well, yeah,
either no
that's
matter what
basically,
happens, I'm worried that I'm gonna watch it and be like,
that doesn't
fuck,
really
what a
make sense.
disappointment.
Doesn't really
Because
add up
again, for
there.
me, I read the expanded universe and
We know.
they picked up the timeline and they started world building it right away, and
Yeah.
they, like, all these new threats that they had to create for the reader to, like, worry about and care about, for, you know, Luke and Leia and Han to, like, you know, oh, this is the next thing we got to save the galaxy from. It was all
Right.
kind of like, oh, this is from another galaxy in one set. There's like, oh, these are people that kind of were hiding out because they didn't want to fuck with the Empire, but now that the Empire's gone, they're going to try to see if
Right.
they
If
can
they can
test their
grab
luck
some
against
power.
this new
Yeah.
republic that's trying to reset itself up. But they explain that to you. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's
And
because that was created by storytellers, and literally all this is a cynical, let's throw the elements of Star Wars in there. Let's have Star Destroyers and Death Stars and X-Wings and Chewbacca and the Millennium Falcon, but without any like concept of what the fuck they're doing. I will say real quick, going back to the prequels, the one time that the prequels had me scratching my head and the movie didn't really tell you what the fuck was going on, even though they kind of explained it later in the film, was the very beginning of Revenge of the Sith, when everyone's talking about like Obi-Wan and Anakin are talking about capturing General Grievous, and everyone's like, if we capture General Grievous, the war will be over. And I'm sitting there going like, who the fuck is General Grievous, and why is he so important, and why is this the first time we're hearing about him? Um, but like I feel like if you took that feeling and you made it 2 movies long, that's the Disney like trilogy so far for me. Like I'm
Yeah.
constantly having to make my own head canon to fill in gaps that the movie should be filling in, you know?
Right.
yeah, to
What a
me,
shit
I
show.
mean, the biggest thing is it just makes no sense why there's a resistance. There's this new movement to, like, pretty much restart the Empire, essentially, is what Snoke and uh, them are all about.
Which is
And then,
confusing because it's not, as far as I understand it, this is like the Empire still exists. Like from what I picked up from the rest of it, where there is some world building that's not in the films, the Empire still exists. It just has like a tiny portion of the galaxy. Like basically, like there was a peace treaty, and the Empire had to disarm and like really
yeah, that
retreat.
that was in the expanded universe.
Right.
That's
But they don't they haven't mentioned it once. They haven't mentioned the Empire, they haven't mentioned the you would think like something that happens 30 years after the end of the Galactic Civil War and everything is like flows from that, we would at least talk about what happened in those 30 years, but they they do not talk even remotely about anything that happens in that period. We are just immediately thrown into what's going on now. It's almost like I don't know, I do not watch a lot of anime, but I've had the same feeling watching anime. Japanese are very into a style of storytelling where they drop your ass right into it and then you kind of like figure out as you go. I would say the difference is though that in that style of storytelling, they kind of like fill in gaps for you. And this, they they have no interest in going back and filling in any of those gaps. They're just always moving forward, always moving forward. Now there's a giant super weapon. We got to blow it up. Now the first order has. Why is it called the first order? It's the second order. I would argue it's the third order. You had the Republic, and then you had the Empire, and now you have the first order. So even if they don't count the Republic as an order, it should still be like this is the second order. I don't even understand their
Right.
name. You know,
Right.
it's a stupid name. And the resistance was literally only chosen because it like recalls the rebellion. You
Right.
know, it makes no sense. A resistance is something you're fighting against, like the French resistance. So what the resistance calls to mind is we have been occupied, and now we're, doing whatever we can to disrupt the powers that be. We're trying to disrupt the German occupation. We're trying to disrupt the First Order occupation. I would say at the end of movie 2, Resistance is an okay title for this organization, but when they were working for ostensibly the Republic, like the Resistance is
Well,
a dumbass name for this organization.
and from what it sounds like they kind of explained that it's like, okay, you have the New Republic and then you have the First Order, and they basically had like a ceasefire, and you had the Resistance who's like undermining it. But it doesn't make sense because you're like, wouldn't the New Republic be totally like, no, we know what the Empire did. It's only been
Right.
30 years. We're not going to let you. So
Become well,
what?
from what it sounds like to me, from what I've
Don't you
heard
think
about
they'd
the
keep tabs on them to
yeah.
make sure they're not
Right,
Well,
building a giant super weapon that can blow up multiple planets
right.
at a time?
well, what it seems like to me, if I'm pulling in everything I know, and I, I like to just use what's in the movies because to me that's all that counts. But I guess Disney wants you to read all the books and shit. But from what if I pull in everything that I know about this, I think that the Republic is kind of denying the existence of the First Order. Like the First Order is in the quote unquote unexplored areas of the galaxy, which how the fuck they're unexplored areas of a galaxy when they have hyperspace and all that. Um, that like they started out there and like they've been growing out there and kidnapping kids to get stormtroopers and shit. So I think the whole thing is supposed to be the Republic is denying that there even is a threat, and maybe the resistance is so shitty and underfunded because they're only getting support from the few senators that maybe like think there might be a threat. But the movie should fucking explain that to us and tell us that, you know? Anyway, we've gotten so far off track in our predictions video.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot to unpack. Other predictions.
Rose
think this
Tico
goes hand.
will sexually assault Finn again.
God, well now Finn is with this black woman on the ship, so I wonder if they're trying to go for a different, like, I don't know. There were a lot of people that were shipping Finn and Poe, even though Finn seemed to be flirting with Ray. Like, I don't know.
If you had like creative control of this third movie, what would you do? Like exactly, like how would you start it? Do you have an idea of what you would do? 'Cause
It's
first,
it
I would probably just make it like a weird fever dream of Luke's and have him wake up and be like,
it has to be it has to be like several years later after the last movie because we've talked about
"Mhm,
this before. The first movie takes place what over the course of like a week,
yeah,
kind of like A New Hope does, which is fine, I guess. And then, but unlike the other movies, the beginning of Empire always seemed to me like it took place like a year or two after New Hope. Like they had enough time to go to a new base, establish a new base. Like
right."
they're getting support from around the galaxy before the Empire finds them. The Empire's been looking ever since Yavin, and
I
then
forget what the exact timeline is, but I do know that there's a significant, like, there's multiple years between
yeah, there's
Empire and Return of the Jedi.
well,
I know that.
Well, and then Empire doesn't take place over the course of a couple days. I know that because Luke goes to Dagobah. Um, he trains in Dagobah for quite a while. Like he doesn't finish his training, but he's getting close. He obviously shows a lot of improvement on Dagobah. I never got the feeling that Luke was on Dagobah for 3 days the way Ray was on. So then there's a gap where they kind of imply that they've got to hunt down, like you said, they've got to hunt down where Han Solo is. So I always assumed the first movies took place over and also the fact that by Return of the Jedi, the rebels have this massive fleet. They have ships that we've never seen before. They have, it seems like they're much better equipped. I mean, they take on the main Imperial fleet, not with necessarily the expectation of winning, but it's not like they just get curb stomped. Like you see them blowing up star destroyers and stuff, and that's something I couldn't imagine in the first movie. So I would say, just like throwing a ballpark, let's say the first movies take place over the course of like 5 years. Okay,
Mhm.
These new movies have taken place over the course of about a week and a half. From
Right.
the time where Ray got involved with all of this, they blew up their super weapon. Immediately after the super weapon, we haven't even had time to pack. They attack our base, and then we're in the slow speed chase that seems to take place over the course of a couple days. Ray only trains for a couple days with Luke, and then that movie ends. So
That's why it cracks me up at like when in the very beginning of TLJ where Rose is like, "You're Finn, the Finn." I'm like, how do you even know him? Like this happened like 2 days ago.
right, there's
Like,
there's been no
and
time.
right, there's been no time to establish that he is a hero because there's been no, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just feel like that's just so silly to be like, he's the hero, and it's like, really? Because he didn't really
I
do anything.
I think I think the first thing I would do is it's got to be a couple years later. I think Ray has to have been training for years. I think the First Order needs to be, kind of solidifying control, and the Resistance has to have like time to actually become a resistance and reorganize after their crushing defeat, because they were led by, you all know who, fucked everything up, Holdo. Um, so they got to get some competent leaders. They got to completely reorganize after the shit show. But do I think it will be? No, it'll probably be like a month later, maybe.
I wouldn't be afraid of that Imperial fleet anyway in the trailer because all they have to do is take a starship and just fucking light
Just an
speed through
X-wing,
it.
yeah, and go right
Yeah,
through.
and it would just take out the whole fleet.
Well,
So
that was what was bothering me about EFAP, and everybody that I watched a lot of trailer reactions, and everyone's like, even Sargon, like everyone is like, how does the First Order have all these ships? Their fleet was just blown up, and I'm like sitting there going, those are not First Order Star Destroyers. They're very clearly Imperial Star Destroyers. They, other than the fact that they're both, I mean, I guess that's just next level nerd shit. Like I guess the average person, but like EFAP, they're not the average fans. They're pretty nerdy, and everyone seems to just like blow past that where they're like, "Oh, those are First Order Star Destroyers." It's like they're all dark, none of their lights are on. They're all sitting in perfect like docked formation. It's clearly a mothballed fleet that's hidden in a nebula. Like that kind of annoyed me with everyone online, but what can you do?
yeah, I think if I had a choice to like go back and rewrite stuff, like I don't know. I always thought it would be really cool to have like the what I was thinking was you have like the Republic is kind of like hunting down the remains of the Empire, 30 years later, and they're kind of becoming like the Empire where they're like they're doing searches and seizures of places thinking that there are, uh stormtroopers hiding somewhere or something like that. They've
Right, they're
become
becoming a
like
little
like tyrant,
authoritarian.
yeah,
Yeah.
authoritarian, and they're building a super weapon so that nothing, they can solidify their power or whatever. And you have this leader who is just like kind of like a little bit crazy, and so Princess Leia breaks off from it and creates the resistance. Like something like that would
Right.
make more sense to
You
me.
still have
And
to
then
kill
you
Leia. You still have to kill Leia for my Kylo origin story, because
so
otherwise it doesn't
then
make sense.
so then what happens is the Leia brokers this like peace agreement, right? And like this is just for like her. I'm not including Ray. I would probably rewrite Ray out and just put like Ben Solo in as his own character or something like that, so he'd have like a story.
Yeah, you
But
you
if you
you merge the
I don't know.
characters of Rey and Ben Solo into one character named Ben
Yes,
Solo.
yes. And anyway, so like near the end of the film, Leia, gets this like peace summit between the two things. I mean, something's gonna go wrong. You just don't know what. Like, so you have all the fleets, like parked outside of this planet or whatever, and during the summit or whatever, like all of um, um, let's say the new Republic ships like detonate. So this guy that was like the leader of the New Republic was actually like secretly working to reestablish the Empire,
Right.
and like he was actually working with like the Imperial Remnant to like take over the super weapon, because that's what the planet is secretly the super weapon. It opens up, it fires on the fleet, and just decimates everything. Like that would be like, oh my god, fuck, what the hell?
Well, and
Like
as
pull
all
the rug
these
out from everybody. It
as
would
all
just,
these
I don't know.
characters interacted and stuff, you would have an idea of what was going on. That's the other
Right.
thing too. Instead of just dropping us on a desert planet 30 years later. Um, yeah, no,
Not,
that's a good idea. Like, yeah, I, it's so far gone.
and
I don't
and I
think
know
in
that's like
10
a rough
years.
idea, but like just something that I always thought about. I was like, that would be kind of cool idea. Just
Yeah,
kind of like flip it around a little bit, make them the little guy, and then it turns out that they were actually going to become the big guy again. And then it
right.
would give them a reason to be powerful again. You know what I
When
mean?
yeah, when the prequels came out, there was kind of like Star Wars mania going on. Like Star Wars was huge, not just with the movies, but with the books and with particularly the video games. There were multiple Star Wars video games that came out every year, and even while the movies were kind of bad, the games were often very good, and kids were really engaged in Star Wars. And I think like people have talked about like, oh, in 10 years, the kids that are growing up with this are gonna love it, and I don't think so. I think that in 10 years nobody's gonna be thinking about these films. I don't even think they'll have the staunch supporters the way the prequels do.
No, I don't think so. Like, I mean, the Last Jedi is so bad. Like, the thing is that it always strikes me interesting that the way people like defend it like so rigorously.
Oh, if
It's
you
like,
if you don't like it, you just don't like anything, and you're just a troll. Didn't you know that? Even
right,
though even though
or
you're putting tons
you
of
hate
reasons.
female characters or
Yeah,
whatever. There's always some like weird intangible reason why you don't like it, or why you don't like it. And it's like, no, I'm explaining to you that the story doesn't make sense, and it's fine. I'm not trying to take the fact that you like it away. I'm trying to tell you that the story you like doesn't make sense. It's poorly written.
yeah.
It's of poor quality, and that doesn't mean you aren't allowed to like it. No one's
It's
saying you can't like it.
it's the most baffling second act of a three-act story that I've ever seen. I've never seen the second act just tear down everything in the first act and leave you with almost nowhere to go. I- It's second acts are hard to do. Um, but there is a prototype for it. It's kind of supposed to be the lowest point of the, I guess, and that's the one thing they did. I mean, I guess it can't get much lower than here for the resistance, but like it's almost comical how they did it. Like I've it's baffling to me. I've never seen them undo everything from the first film. Like why even have the
Yeah,
first film?
right.
They could have started it with this, I guess, and like nothing from the first film mattered.
Yeah, I do like that the first trailer had uh Ben repairing his helmet.
Well,
It's like,
and that's the whole thing too. Is that's been the joke? Is like JJ gonna try to pull the same thing that Ryan Johnson pulled, and say no. Now I'm gonna undo what you did when you undid my stuff, and I'm kind of putting it back to status quo. We'll see. That's really difficult to do in the third of a movie of a trilogy.
right,
Um,
especially with all the things that he's done.
yeah.
Um, calls into question. My question is like, so since Force Ghosts can now like interact with the world and shoot lightning and stuff, is Palpatine gonna shoot lightning at people?
What the fuck is that noise?
That's my dog.
Oh.
She's wagging her, she's
Well,
itching herself.
if she's being adorable, I guess we'll allow it.
She
Um,
is.
yeah, it, it I don't even know, man. I don't know. It's baffling. What we're gonna do is we're all gonna have to get together, watch this movie. As much as I don't want to give them money, I am gonna see it, and we're gonna have to record right after because I want fresh hot takes from all of us.
Yes.
Maybe it'll really surprise us. Maybe it will be so good that
I really, and the thing is that even though I hated The Last Jedi, I really want this film to be good. Even if it doesn't really like stack up well with the other two films, like and make sense. If I get one good film out of the three, like
yeah.
I'm satisfied. I can be satisfied with that, even
I
though it's still
some things that I think are bad signs that kind of indicate that that's not going to be the case is in the new trailer. There are B wings, A wings, and Y wings, and I kind of get the B wings, but the Y wing was an outdated like 30-year-old fighter at the start of the last movies. Um, so it would make no sense to build new ones like they kind of have with like they have new X wings, they have new A wings. I would imagine the B wings that we're going to see are new, but it makes no sense for there to be Y wings in this film except for fan service. And again, we don't know what makes Star Wars good. We're not thinking about the world building at all. We're just throwing shit in there that we think fans are going to like in a desperate attempt to get people to like this movie. And also so we can sell new Y Wing merchandise, you know? Um, I saw that and I really thought, oh, fuck, they're not thinking about this at all. That ship was old and shitty at the beginning of A New Hope. There'd be no reason. It'd be like if the U.S. military was like, "Oh, we're coming out with the 2020 F4 Phantoms, a plane that was designed in 1959, but we're gonna build new versions of it because it was a good plane back then." Like, what the fuck? Um,
Right.
but Webbed, do you have any other thoughts?
Just echo what Snack said. I mean, when the first movie came out of this trilogy, I just was. I've said it before. I'm so upset that they threw out everything from the old movies, the expanded universe when Disney bought the franchise.
I
And
understand
I was
the
worried that
expanded
they were.
universe because that's so sprawling and they wanted to tell their own story, but I
No, and I
wish,
got that. I mean,
yeah,
I in my head, I that's exactly what I said. Is it's like I know that there's a lot of that would be hard to turn into a trilogy of movies. However, there was a
But
good place for them to plug a trilogy of movies into in that span of time, or even
right.
picking up at the end of that span of time, because where the expanded universe was pretty much like about 30 years in
right.
the future. So they could have
Or
come up with something. But I told myself, whatever, we'll go see them, we'll give it a chance. And the first two movies have just been a letdown.
Yeah.
or you
So
could have a series that's set like 1,000 years after this. You
Well,
know what I
right,
and
mean?
there's
Like
precedence for that because the Old Republic is incredibly popular, and that takes
right.
place what? That takes place a long time before A New Hope,
it's
isn't it?
like
Like
2,000
2000?
years.
Yeah. So there's
Yeah.
precedence of you put it so far in the future that you kind of get it away from Star Wars that we all know and love, but you can
Exactly.
reuse
You can do
elements.
whatever you want. You can do
Yeah.
And
whatever
you
you want
don't
with
have
it.
to have Skywalkers and shit. But
No.
see, they weren't going to do that because they wanted to bring back all the actors from the previous film.
To kill them off and ruin them.
Right. And again, like the ways they did that to me, just all of it was like, what is
Yeah.
going on? This doesn't even make sense. And
Like,
that's
it would
that's
be
my
really cool
problem.
if you wanted to have a movie that was called The Force Awakens to set it 1,000 years after
Right.
uh the episode 6, and the Force has faded into
Into
legend and
legend.
myth.
Yeah.
And it makes sense for them to be like, oh, Luke Skywalker, that's a myth.
Not
You know what I
Right.
mean?
28 years later, Luke
Like,
Mhm.
Skywalker, I thought he was a myth. Like probably the most famous person ever that tens of thousands of people saw his deeds, you know? Um
and then like you have like
his sister's
uh
literally an important political figure.
right. Right, exactly. And this is like it happened 30 years ago. Like it's not that,
No, I
And
think
then
that would have been
like
the best way to save it, you know.
right, and you could even if you even wanted to tie it in with something, you could have like, something that like uh something tied to like Palpatine's legacy.
Right.
If you wanted to tie it to something
Like
originally, because
Palpatine
like
does have
Palpatine
play a really long game or maybe he did
exactly
have he had clones
exactly
and the facility gets reactivated or something. Yeah.
yeah, something like that.
Well,
Like
but
if you wanted to tie it in there.
if you do that, you can't have TIE fighters and X-wings and all the shit that they wanted to sell to people, you know? Like
But
you
it's Star Wars. You can create new ships. I mean, they
no,
created new ships for the
but
prequels, and
that would
everyone
take
like fucking
creativity and
bought that merch.
you can't do that when you're completely cynical assholes, man. You got to have a
Oh,
creative bone in your body to
No,
do
I know.
any of
I mean,
that.
that's why I was worried, and that's
Yeah.
why I still am worried about this film. And I
No, and
feel
you were
like,
right.
some of these options we've explored are uh, possibilities for saving it, but also I feel like are possibilities for them to take that idea and still fuck it up.
Right.
And I don't know. I mean, I'm a sucker, so I'm gonna pay and go see the fucking movie because it's Star Wars and I love Star Wars. And
I
I
just
think
want
a
to
lot of
say,
it is because I want to pray and hope
right, they get their shit
that
together.
they get their shit together.
I just want to say that Ryan Johnson's trilogy is not happening. It's been what, a year and a half. There's been no like pre-production. Disney still keeps saying like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna have a Star Wars trilogy. Like, don't he's gonna have it," but it's not happening. There's no way. I know in Hollywood people fail upwards. I know it's kind of the nature, but like Disney has looked at it was such a failure. It didn't make nearly the money they want. It didn't have and honestly, like they, they say all this shit, but in the background, Disney knows what they've done to the fan base. And
Right.
now they're starting to see the numbers on merchandise and they know that, oh shit, maybe we shouldn't alienate the people that buy our products. Um, there is no way. If they do, it would be the most arrogant, stubborn thing that I've ever seen Hollywood do, is if they give him a Star Wars trilogy. Like, I almost want it to happen because I know it'll just be a dumpster fire. But I, I can't imagine a world where Disney sees The Last Jedi, sees the critical reception, sees the fan reception, and also it underperformed financially and goes, yeah, let's give this guy an entire franchise to basically helm.
Yeah. No. That I and if he does, he clearly has so much disdain for the fans. The way he's responded to criticism of his story. Like, I mean, I know it's not easy to take criticism, but he's responded so disingenuously
You,
that like
you know,
if Disney were to theoretically give him his trilogy, I wouldn't watch it,
criticism, here's the funny thing about criticism.
or I wouldn't watch it in theaters, I should
Yeah,
say.
criticism that doesn't have, like, every movie gets criticized. There's hundreds of millions of people watching movies. Every movie has a certain amount of criticism to it.
Exactly.
Criticism that when somebody criticizes you, if you feel good about yourself or you feel good about what they're criticizing, does it get to you? You go, no, that's fine. I think I did a good job." He is so defensive and he is so crazy in his response that I think he's like, "Oh shit, I'm a fraud," and everybody knows it. Like, that's what I think, because I think if he was like a Quentin Tarantino or somebody that actually had some talent, he would just let all this shit roll off his shoulders. But instead, he just fights and rails against it. And I'm telling, the only criticism that gets to people is criticism that they believe about themselves. So I don't know. If somebody says something and you know that it's not true about you, it really doesn't bother you. You just go, well, whatever. You can say what you want, but I don't know. I think
Right.
I think he's a hack. He's a hack fraud, as Red Letter Media would say. And
Well,
good
like
riddance
if
to him.
you okay, so like let's say you have a director like Tarantino, and you go, I know you were going for this, but like logically, it doesn't make sense in the script. He might say something like, "Oh, I know. I just wanted this cool gunfight scene to be in this movie because it was just going to be,
Right.
violent, hyper violent, and have a really like good payoff to it."
Yeah.
Whereas you say that to Ryan Johnson, instead of him having like a nuanced response, you just be like, "Oh, you just hate women, you
Yeah.
man baby."
Yeah.
Like,
That's
no, no,
that's the
no.
default that's the default response now to any film that's terrible. And it's just weird because they pick and choose, because nobody says like, the series that are doing well doesn't face this kind of backlash because they're actually good stories. Like I said, I watched Altered Carbon on Netflix, which I highly recommend. And
I have not watched it.
oh, you want to talk about a series that has incredible world building and you really understand what's going on, and not always through them. They do a lot of show don't tell, but like everything is so organic. Every conversation really feels like conversations these characters should be
Huh.
having, but you're getting all this information about what's going on in the meantime. And the way they've just built everything from the sets to the interactions to the plot is just superb. It's just excellent. And I'm like, nobody's nobody's giving the one of the main characters in that, actually two of the main characters are female, and I don't see anybody criticizing them as Mary Sue's. Even though they're both kind of badasses, they're both really badasses, but they don't at all feel like Mary Sue's. Um,
Right.
you know, there have been a million. Nobody came at, like you said. We always go back to Terminator and Kill Bill
An
and
alien.
Alien and all these characters. Like, uh, where were the man babies there? Well, it's because they don't really exist. It's people reacting to legitimate shitty storytelling, but the
And
default defense is, well, you just don't like women, or and it's like, okay, anytime I hear that before a movie even comes out, I'm like, oh, they're already preparing. They already know they have a shit film on their hands and they're doing defense.
exactly, and they're already setting up the excuses and their scapegoat for
Yeah.
make defending their shitty movie.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to,
And
when the next trailer comes out, we'll have to do a shorter discussion about uh, literally what's in the trailer. And that'll
yeah,
probably be, this is kind of like part two talking about this. I think we already had an episode where we talked a little bit about what was coming up, but in
yeah,
Star Wars. Um, whatever happened to the Obi-Wan film?
I think that's gonna be. Is that gonna be a
They're gonna
film
do
or
an
is that gonna be on
Obi-Wan
Disney Plus?
Yeah, there's an Obi-Wan TV series or something with Ewan McGregor is going to star in it. It's going to be on Disney Plus streaming
Ewan
They're
service.
McDonald.
and they're also doing The Mandalorian.
Hmm.
Yeah,
But I thought Disney just said like, oh, we think the market's oversaturated, so we're going to pull back on our Star Wars. Now they're doing two new series. That's
And
interesting.
whatever Benioff and Weiss are doing.
Yeah, and I know the most recent animated series just got shit canned. Star Wars Resistance or whatever, where it was about like I never saw it. They were training pilots that got shit canned after 2 seasons. The other Disney series, what was the name of that one? Rebels. Rebels got shit canned after like 3 seasons. Disney
Hmm.
doesn't stick with things. I think they don't plan well, and then things underperform, and then they immediately like change directions. Like, how many times has Kathleen Kennedy changed directions with Star Wars since she's been in control? Like,
Or changed creative directors for
yeah.
your fucking film.
Oh yeah, you pick a director that has a voice that and then you go, well, actually, we want you to make this corporate slop, but nobody was paying attention to what you were doing. The movie's three-quarters the way done. Let's bring in another director and completely erase your voice and make it corporate slop.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I am interested in watching Altered Carbon. It's on my list. Maybe
Yeah,
we can do an episode discussing it or something.
yeah, absolutely. I think you would absolutely love it. It's I've watched it twice now because I watched it once on my own and then once with my wife. She was kind of interested in it, so I restarted. It's not very long. I think it's like 8 episodes.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm watching The Boys
The
right
Boys
now,
is excellent. Yeah, The
and
Boys
I
is
started Chernobyl. So
yeah, also all really good series. The Boy see television is in this like weird renaissance where I think television is where all the awesomeness is right now. Like, there's good films, but like you have The Boys and Altered Carbon and Chernobyl and these series that are just top notch. I mean, Westworld, um Mindhunter. Mindhunter is incredibly well done. And it's like, I'd rather just watch these shows than go to the movie because honestly, they're so much better than films nowadays.
I've only seen the first season of Mindhunter, but
The second one just came out. It's not as good as the first, but it's also it's better than, I would say, like the second season of True Detective, where it just got terrible.
yeah,
Um,
that was a rough season.
yeah,
And
the second
season 2 of Westworld was such garbage.
see I I think season 2 of Westworld was well crafted still. It definitely suffered from some storytelling issues. It got a little bit up its own asshole with telling stuff in like 4 different time periods.
Well, not
Um,
only that, I maintain that every character has to be played so obtusely. They all talk obtusely when they speak. They're
it's
all quoting
overwritten.
fucking. It's so
It
overwritten.
it's
It's
it's a
like,
little
oh, okay,
overwritten, yeah.
this show is definitely in danger of disappearing up its own asshole right
it's
now.
it's trying to be like Matrix philosophy, nature of existence, nature of life. And I get
Right,
that. It doesn't have to be like you said, you can have a couple characters that are like that. Like, you can have a couple Morpheus characters, but not everyone should be that up their own asshole. You're
right.
absolutely right. So, all right, well, Webbed, Snacks, any other shows you're watching or things you want to talk about in the future episodes?
It is coming out next week,
I've
and
heard
I
bad
would
things.
would
Cool.
love to do a discussion about it.
Yeah, let's
It-
definitely go see that. I've heard bad things in screenings, but we'll
yeah,
see.
I've heard it's not as far as like a sequel to it goes, but I mean, who knows? Because I wonder how many of those people that saw this, saw the movie, are like fans of the book and how true it is to the book.
Well,
Because
the original. Go ahead.
one of the things that bothered me about the movie was that in the books they see the clown and then they see what they're actually like afraid of,
It was
whereas
backwards,
this it's
yeah.
backwards in this. It didn't make sense because it
The
was like
the
the
clown was supposed to
purpose.
be his weird fucked up way of drawing children in because he's like kids like clowns, but he could only create a weird fucked up clown.
Right.
Yeah. Now it's almost like a calling card where he's like, "Haha, I gotcha. It was really me all along." And we're all like, "Yeah, we knew. We knew it was you."
Yeah, but there was a lot of really cool, creepy imagery, creepy scenes. The jump scares, don't not a big fan of those, but there was a lot of really cool imagery. That first shot where Georgie goes down in the basement and he sees those two globe things, that
Yeah,
was
that
like,
was
oh,
awesome.
I was like, is this what we're in for? I'm so excited for this.
Well, I will say the original like television show with what's his name? Uh
Tim Curry.
yeah, Tim Curry. The adult part of that was significantly worse than the child part of that.
I barely remember that part.
Yeah, I think
The-
it's just kind of is the it formula where it seems like the kid part is more compelling and the adult part is like, all right, I guess we're doing this again, but now we're adults, so it's not nearly as creepy. There's something about kids having to deal with like supernatural monsters that like puts you a little bit more on edge. Whereas when it's
Mhm.
adults, you're like, get your shit together, go to Kmart, buy a rifle, you know. It's like we're not using slingshots anymore, you know.
Right.
But I don't know. In my opinion, I think horror movie with kids is a little bit more off-putting, just because you remember what it's like to be a kid and have no
Yeah.
resources or understanding of the world. You know.
Yeah, but I'm definitely seeing it next Friday.
Yeah.
So maybe get a group of us or something and we can discuss it afterwards.
Is that when it comes out?
Yes, sir. Next Friday. The 6th, right?
I work.
Yes, the
I could
6th.
see it. I could see it Thursday evening. I do work Friday and Saturday.
I work Thursday.
Well, shit.
Um and then the other big thing that is like this whole Spider-Man leaving the MCU thing.
Oh God, we'll talk about that too. Yeah, we'll
That's-
maybe roll that into our next discussion because it's just
yeah,
what a
I think
clusterfuck.
yeah, I think that's what we should talk about maybe
it's
next time
It's okay, guys. It's not like we built the
Spider-Man.
entire next phase of the MCU around Spider-Man.
Yeah, the Spider-Man divorce problems, and then like all of the shows and stuff coming through for Phase 4. And I think that'll be all interesting to talk about.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. It's gonna be a shit show. All
Yeah.
right, boys. Well, enjoy your week, and we'll get back together next weekend.
All right. Thanks for listening.